Okay, so my name is Delson Hadamil, and I am part of the Los Lunas team. And my whole project was going over the epidemiology of COVID-19. And for this project, I was mainly focusing on my community, the tribal community. Because what really got me on this was because COVID-19 has taken a lot of us, taken a lot of things from us, taken people, it's taken opportunities. And as I've noticed, it would have a big toll on the Native American community a lot. Because just like any other community, my community is slowly dying, being held by the elders. And with this being very deadly to the elders, it's been a struggle for us to even keep our traditions alive this day. So, what I had planned was to create a net logo model depicting the epidemiology within our whole tribe. And I would emulate all my research onto it, such as using data from other tribes and from using mask data for how effective they are in filtering out COVID-19 particles. And see, once I locked down my variables, I would then try out my whole data and figure out which and answer one of my hypotheses as answering what safety measure will not be effective in the spread of COVID-19 within the community, which standards will actually decrease the spread, and which ones will actually increase the spread. And I'm also looking into like what other factors also take into account when it comes to lowering the spread. And see, so the materials I've used for this project were NetLogo, and research on COVID-19 and the lockdowns in other tribes. So my research, I started out researching by looking into how COVID-19 spreads, how contagious it is, and the death rates in different age groups. I found most of this data on Mexico NM Health, which have kept their data updated monthly and have helped me a lot to look into the death rates in different age groups. Then I started looking into how effective each mask was, and some research has went into it, figuring out that masks like the N95 right here is the best one compared to any ones like these, the two ply. But since these ones are most easy to come by, it's easy to use, and they're also still effective in stopping the spread. But some of the worst ones were stuff like bandanas. And my research even went further, going into getting help from one of my friends that works in a smoke shop. She has gotten data from all the customers that have come in with mask and no mask, and what specific type of mask they've used. She's also helped me emulate it within the program, so I could get a best representation of how available each of these masks are to all of our members. Then I looked into how many people live in Isleta and how that could be reflected within my data, which, as I found, there is like a sweet point that best emulates how our data has been lately, which is around like 900 people. Having more, the data goes on for a longer time. Having less, then the infection just goes away too fast. So that was kind of the point that I found. Then modeling, I started out with a normal epidemiology model. I used some of the models within the NetLogo, and I started building off of them. Took out elements that didn't pertain to COVID, but I changed a few of them, such as COVID being in the air for at the max in the best conditions for 3 hours, but normally they last like 30 minutes. And I emulated that, such as everyone that's sick would leave a trail of COVID particles behind them, so that if anyone runs into them or happens to run into the person that's infected, will have a chance, depending on their mask, if they'll get infected or not. Then depending on age, they'll also have a chance on living, such as being younger people won't die as easily as the older people, as we found by data. Then let's see, because I have some of that data right here. Some of that data right here, showing how effective it is, showing how much droplets they have found that could go through these masks, showing that N95 is the best, going all the way to fleece, which is the worst, even behind having no mask, which I could guess that's because of it holds it in. But I had also emulated that in my by building a trend line. So depending on whatever the turtles roll, they'll have a specific mask, depending on which is shown from my data that my friend has collected. So after that, I started looking into the different lockdowns each of the tribes have done. And the most common ones were 32-hour and 57-hour lockdowns. I looked into why some tribes were better than the other, which I found out it's mainly because of enforcement, as some enforce it a lot, like the Navajo Nation, some don't, just like my tribe. Then I also created one if there were one part of the code as if there were no precautions, only masked. So I had created a base for the data to show if everything like that. And as time went on, I started updating my data, such as having vaccines and using data that was readily available at that early stage of the vaccine. Okay, and see, so for lockdowns, they would happen every weekend, forcing everyone to stay at their homes or teleport to their homes and stay there for the time being. And for normal days, they'll actually go to the plaza to celebrate the traditions once every month, because as in my tribe, we basically have a dance once every month. And I tried to emulate that. And I made these months in 30-day periods. And one day, and each tick that goes within the program, which I'll show you later, it will go by an hour each, go past an hour. So, let's see. Okay, after I got all that down and determined all my factors, I then ran through several trials with the executive orders. Each trial was ran through 3 times, and the program was ran until the virus ended up dying out. And I kept as I said, I kept the number of people living in the tribe at 900, and I changed the percentage of infected between 8, 9, and 10. Then the percentage vaccinated at 0, 5, and 10%. Show how effective the vaccines would be in combating. Then the last part I had put in was enforcement at 50, 75, and 100. I used this to show, because each turtle has their own rebellion level, and if that is greater than the enforcement, then they won't follow the rules and they'll actually start doing their own things if there's a lockdown. Which that's another factor I have seen and I wanted to check out. Which, see, I have a separate paper, which I have looked into the Muscalero, Zuni, and Navajo Nation. And we can see here that these tribes have kept track of their numbers, and most of them have followed the same trend as the whole state, as the whole country even, all rising all the way until July before we end up going, before the numbers start going down. And I kept track of them on their Twitter account, on the Navajo Nation's Twitter account, which they kept these numbers readily available. And to help me with the lockdowns, I looked into the Navajo Nation, which had divided their lockdowns into separate sections. As you can see here, like a 57-hour lockdown will have a trend line like this, and I emulated this within the program, as so as the 32-hour lockdown. So we can see here. And let's see. So with that in mind, when it came to comprehending the data, I would separate the data into 3 separate groups depending on the percentage of people infected. Then I reviewed the results to determine which safety measure decreased the spread and increased the spread and didn't affect the spread at all. So I determined it by observing how long it takes for everyone in the tribe to become healthy, and used the average amount of days to determine which safety measure is effective for each group. Then I also looked into does enforcement actually help? As we can see here, this is all the data that I have collected, with 32-hour lockdowns having the least amount of days, but slowly they go up by 1 day as the percentage started infected actually go up 1%. So here, got the results, overall results, which shows the average of all of these days and not even taking into account of the enforcement percentage. As we can see here at the overall, there's 30, on average, a 32-hour lockdown would take 37 days, with 2 overall deaths, with 57 coming out with 42 days of COVID and 3 deaths. And we got here a normal month was, oh my God, 7,261 days and 833 deaths. Almost the whole tribe gone within 19 years, which the 32 hours was the most effective, as I found, surprisingly. But the 57-hour lockdown worked just as fine, but it worked at a slower rate. It took like a little bit of a month and a half compared to the 32 hours lockdown having a little bit over than a month. Then with the normal, if it was a normal day, such as everyone going to, actually half of the people going to the plaza to go celebrate these traditions, it actually would take over 19 years. And as I said, 833 people dying, while the surviving would have most likely been wearing a high-grade mask, like an N95, or would have received their vaccine. But as I kind of noticed, the enforcement had a little bit to do with the infection numbers. That having a higher enforcement did affect it, but to me, it's kind of inconclusive if that helps. But I have to come to a conclusion that it does actually determine what happens. And see, and here's an example. Here's my program. And I had set it to having a normal day, having about 922 people, 8% infected, 10% of people having the vaccine, and 75% enforcement, even though that really doesn't do anything. Each turtle is actually able to social distance within 180-degree sight view in front of them. So if they see someone, they'll actually turn around. And the green ones are the healthy ones. Red ones are infected, and the yellow ones are the ones with the vaccine. And the red ones, they'll actually leave COVID particles behind them. They'll leave COVID particles behind them, and it'll slowly evaporate with due time. With due time, and every particle that they release, it's random depending on like the roll of the dice. As I came down to it, it's more like you're not hacking out your lungs every day. So the plaza is right here. The next dance is on day 59. And as you'll see here, as we get close to it, they'll actually teleport to the plaza, which is this blue area. Which the plaza, it's during a traditional event, there's a lot of people there, a lot of people interacting, such as meeting people they haven't seen in a long time. As you can see here, they all came. End of the day, they all disperse. And there's a lot of interactions. So it's not that big. So there's a lot of people that will come together and actually like to interact with each other than 52 hour, which for my conclusion for the 52 hour, why that's somehow worse than the rest, than the 32 hour, is because of how everyone is sent home, even the healthy ones. And with them staying at home, and I've also seen research done showing that people who quarantine off a loved one in an area, most of them have gotten infected by the ventilation that goes through their house. So that's another factor that could contribute to this if it's not done properly. As we can see, okay, and as we get back to here, we see the lockdown. They're all sent back to their homes. A few of them would actually rebel and go out, and see right here, and they're home. And if their rebellion is greater, then they won't listen. And yeah, that's about it. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. I have one. Did you take into account with the number of family members in each home, the multi-generational household? Like how many members were in a family for the model and would quarantine
Yeah,
to this home?
Yeah, I've taken that into account because I know that a lot of within our tribe, we actually have like multi-generational within. Like I have two grandparents that are taking care of their great-grandchildren. So I took that into account as well. And I've also, I forgot to say this, but I also divided this into sections that are important to Asleta, such as right here, this Pickle Heights, Chakal, Ranchitos, the Plaza, the village, and I forgot what this area is called. But yeah, I've made sure that they'd be grouping into the same area, and they would be assigned a certain patch, and that would be their home. Which each of them they have a different age, but I made it equal to the percentage as I found from the census. You're muted.
I said, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Judges,
Anything
anyone else?
I'm in your map. Why does it look like the river is extremely infected?
Okay, I thought of actually making that so that if the turtles walk to the river, they would actually turn around. But as I started thinking of it, they would have only a narrow way going through here and here, getting to the other side. And it didn't make sense to me to have them only go through a little area, which a lot of people within our tribe like to visit family members, which they live like across the tribe. And there's a lot of visiting and interaction within our tribe. So yeah, it was a scrapped idea that I had thrown out. Just didn't change.
So that's like a patch color, not a turtle color, right? The red.
Right. That's just
Yep.
yeah. Just like the plaza right here.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Well, you may have addressed it, but indoor versus outdoor, the propagation of COVID in the air, was there a difference in the model?
Well, with that, I just made it just to, because with certain areas, there's like certain housing and areas which I would have to take into account with that. And I would have to be working a little bit longer, and I'm only the one-person team working on this. So if I were to do this again, I would actually, make the second thing. Number one, I would actually make it so that a certain percentage of people would get their vaccines as they become readily available. But at the time as I was doing it, they weren't readily available. So I had to think of that. Second, I would actually do that because I know that there are areas that people like to go to. Like there's a recreation center right here and a public library right here. And we have the casino right here and here.
And so north is to the left, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where's the smoke? Where's the smoke shop? Just is it Lino's smoke shop?
Yeah, I think it is. It's right here, down from the hill. Yeah.
Cool.
There's that. Then there's Little Island right here. There's one right here, I know for a fact. But yeah, I just made it so that every cough was random. And as I said, it's going in hour intervals. So that as every tick goes by, an hour goes by. And by the max of 3 ticks, the one patch that one turtle might have left would have already dissipated. But that's with perfect conditions, as I found. Usually in real life, it take like at the max 30 minutes. I even saw questions for probably 15.
And Delson, one more. Did you work on a project like with a fire engine response at one time, or did you? Is this you had some other projects in the challenge?
Oh yeah, I have
previous
done.
years?
Yeah, I've done working with algae. One creating a model that will analyze how green algae is, and the other one creating a model.
Very cool.
Also, one more thing, I like your background. I've been there before.
Up in Farmington, Aztec.
Yep.
Yep. A very cool project. Nice.
Thank you.
Anything else, judges?
Sure. So this is Dave Janicki. Very nice integration of data and thinking specific to your area. That's very nice to see. And having seen you run it several times is also always something I like to see with these models. You talked a little bit about what you'd add in to continue this. What did you discover that sort of indicated to you how you'd change things, or even what you might recommend to your tribe that you could then test with more data and modeling?
Well, another thing, as I said, the doses, which as more data is coming out, I'm slowly discovering like how effective they are. I'm wondering like how effective they are within different ages. See like if it works, like maybe look into if it doesn't work if a person probably has like asthma or something. See how I could implement it and probably get a good count of the percentage of people within my tribe that has like those underlying conditions. Sorry. So yeah, I've worked with the data that I had at the time. A lot of them situational, just like NM Health. I think I was working off the October data, which has helped me look into the death rates between different ages, which this program is like, could be taken on further on, but it's like a base.
Mm-hmm. Very good. I mean, that's exactly what our health professionals have been struggling with too. So you're right there in the thick of things. And with the variants coming out, we've got all sorts of things that people are thinking about in the same way that you are, of what might happen next, especially if the age distribution changes. And so you've got a good base to help your tribe think about it. And I hope you're talking to some people and show this around. It's very nice work. Thank you.
Yeah. Which I've also kept track of the whole tribe within the newsletter. They kept track of the percentage infected and all that, which I think this is in February. Yeah, we've kind of done our part just to keep track, but we haven't done our part to enforce the law. So it's just a piece of paper out in the wind.
That's a good way to describe it. I like that. And that's the problem we have all over. And I would say that's the problem I have myself, trying to keep track and enforce my own rules. So, not an unusual problem, but something that we all have to deal with.
That's when you're the judge and the executioner. Sorry.
Well, I hope I'm not executing myself.
All right. Thank you very much, Delson.